Okay, everyone, thanks a lot for the introduction and for the interesting talks from both Laila and Henrik. My name is Erik, and I work, as Jeppe said, in Fredrikstad as a crime prevention coordinator. I've been asked to say something about what we have learned the last 20, 10, and 2 years, marking the sad anniversaries of September 11th, the 22nd of July, and the 10th of August. 3 violent and excruciatingly painful dates in our recent history. I will also touch upon how we can use these terrible experiences to improve our prevention and countering of radicalization and hatred in our Nordic cities. First, what have we learned about radicalization and extremism the last 20 years? Much of what constitutes our working field today has evolved through these last 2 decades, establishing both a distinct field of research and a field of professional practice, not only for police and intelligence services, but also within psychology, schools, and social work. Whereas extremism before and in the early 2000s mainly was considered the responsibility of police and security, at least now in Europe and the Nordic countries, cities and municipalities have a natural role in preventing and countering radicalization and extremism, which from my perspective as a city employee is a good thing. We have also learned that extremism is a local and at the same time global phenomenon, that the political and societal development in distant parts of the world influence the local situation in a small town like Fredrikstad, for example, through our local boys traveling to Syria and Iraq and joining terrorist organizations there. But at the same time, how local violent and extremist groups here in Fredrikstad can also be part of virtual, digital, and global hateful movements and influence them. We have learned that extremism and radicalization are wicked problems, and that should influence how we counter these threats to our democracies. It means that we need a long-term commitment in our work. It means that we need circular and systemic analysis, that we need to counter extremism through measures on different levels at the same time, using all the tools we have in our toolbox, involving different professions and both public and civil society stakeholders. It means that we have to acknowledge that our interventions could have unintended negative consequences and that we must take into consideration how our work is perceived by our city's inhabitants. And it means that we can't go looking for the one perfect solution to all our troubles, but on the contrary, admit that we need a lot of different perspectives, theories, and views to get the grips on this field. We have learned that we can't rest in times where extremism and radicalization have less focus. We have to build our services continuously to ensure that we are prepared for the next wave or waves of extremism, whatever form it will take. This summer in Fredrikstad, as in other Norwegian cities, have been a special summer, marking 10 years since the terrorist attacks on Utøya and the Norwegian government quarters, the 22nd of July 2011. In Fredrikstad, we lost 2 girls that day, Leila and Andrine, that you see on the pictures. And this summer, I have met their friends, teachers, and family, and I have spent some days at Utøya. And this raised the question, how can we work to prevent an incident and terrorist attack like the 22nd of July or the 10th of August from happening again? First and foremost, we have an obligation to gather around and protect both the memory of the ones killed and to care for the survivors and relatives left with loss, grief, and anger. 1/3 of the survivors from Utøya have experienced hate speech and threats, and 75% of them links this directly to their status as Utøya survivors. 1/3 of the survivors still suffer from post-traumatic stress symptoms, and many are struggling with physical injuries from the terrorist attack. To not forget in this way means that we will remind each other of the horrors of the 22nd of July and make sure that we are not forgetting what happened. Children growing up today have no experienced memories of the terrorist attacks in 2011. Henrik talked about how we construct reality through our memories, and this means that we, both as grown-ups and professionals, have an obligation to remember what happened, to talk about it, and take the pain and discomfort that naturally arise when dealing with such horrible events. And in the same manner we deal with violent jihadist terrorism since September 11th, we need to see the ideological and organizational links between neo-Nazi and right-wing extremist terrorist attacks and groups, both in time and geography. It's challenging to prevent and counter violent extremism. We need to build inclusive society, as also both Laila and Henrik were touching upon, and cities to prevent marginalization of individuals and groups. We need to engage when we are worried about people we know or meet who seem radicalized or part of extremist groups. And as cities, we need good measures to set into effect when dealing directly with violent extremism. But maybe most importantly, we have to build resilient local communities, cities and countries, resilience against radicalization and violent extremism. So how do we do that? I will now briefly share some of our experiences on the ground from this work, highlighting our democracy camp for youth this summer. The terrorists of 22nd of July and 10th of August's attitudes are built on dehumanization of Muslims, refugees, and members of the Social Democratic Party. These are sentiments that we recognize from the Holocaust and the genocide, for example, in Rwanda or Srebrenica. How can we counter this? Through focus on human rights and to work against racism, anti-Semitism, and Islamophobia. And the terrorists, they base their ideology on conspiracy theories. We can build resilience against this through knowledge about how conspiracy theories work and through critical thinking. To be an active citizen in a democracy means more than putting a ballot in a box every second or fourth year, as we have done the last weeks in Norway. It means to get knowledge about how our society works. It means we have to think critically, state our opinions, disagree with others without falling into conflict, and to cooperate with others to build good cities to live in. It means having a democracy where everybody has the possibility to participate and where all groups in society are represented. Such a democracy could be resilient against radicalization and extremism. But how do we build this? First, I think we need to acknowledge that the fact that democracies need maintenance. We can't take our present democracies for granted, and we have to work consistently to improve them. This summer, we invited youth in Fredrikstad to participate in a small democracy camp during their summer vacation. It started actually out as a funny idea early spring, but through funding from Gjensidigestiftelsen and Trygby and also the Utdanningsdirektoratet in Norway, and a good network of stakeholders, some of them represented here today, we were suddenly able to actually invite participants and do the camp. So 12 youth gathered in the beginning of August for activities focusing on team building. We were visiting the 22nd of July Center in Oslo. We dealt with social entrepreneurship, critical thinking, and conspiracy theories. We were talking about libraries as democratic hubs, international humanitarian work, and last but not least, visiting our good friends in Bærum in the Al Noor Mosque, where amongst others, both Henrik and Hawa gave us a thorough and good conversation on terrorism, racism, and Islamophobia, and how we together as individuals and collectives can prevent such atrocities from happening again. This democracy camp, together with our other democracy project and initiatives in Fredrikstad, are examples on how we as a city can build and maintain our democracy. They are not beacons or gold standard or perfect measures, but examples of how we are trying to work and learn to build and develop what we call democratic competences for us, with children and youth as target groups. So what links these projects? What are the common experiences and takeoffs from these initiatives? First of all, children and youth care about society, they care about our democracy, and they engaged in fight against terrorism and hate if we facilitate and let them. If we are struggling with recruitment or sensing a lack of enthusiasm, we have to look to what we are doing wrong and not complain about uninterested or passive youth. Secondly, we have to show our youth that we genuinely mean it when we say that we want to build a democratic society. And then we have to show this through our own example. We can't brag about democratic projects without working for a good student or youth democracy at the same time. Thirdly, democratic competence is more than just having knowledge about society. It's also about democratic values and attitudes and democratic skills. And to build skills, we have to train. And to train, we have to do. So Our children, youth, and also grown-ups need to experience and train democratic skills in practice. We need to train to raise our voice. We need to train to meet other people with completely different opinions than us. And we have to train to work together with other people to create change in society. Another link is our goal of developing arenas for democratic action for engaged youth in Fredrikstad, in schools, youth clubs, libraries, civil society organizations, and other institutions. We can have one democracy camp with 12 youth, and that's fine. But imagine the change we can do if we improve the teaching on controversial issues, 22nd of July or hate speech in school, reaching hundreds and thousands of youth in Fredrikstad. And also how these arenas, if we manage to work together, can create even better meeting places for democratic development through good synergies. Lastly, our efforts should be considered as pieces in a puzzle or bricks in a wall that together form a more lasting and long-term commitment to maintain and build the democratic competences for our children and youth in Fredrikstad. Thank you, and looking forward to the conversation.